I hope everybody could turn their cameras on. In our philosophy class, we have already consumed all that. I've already mentioned this several times now. We have already consumed the number of lessons found in the curriculum guide. So the lesson that I'll give you now, or the lesson that's found in your modules now, is not within the curriculum guide. It's an added lesson. I'm just trying to look for lessons in philosophy which I could add in. I'm trying to exercise academic freedom, whatever. I'm trying to look for important points which I feel like we probably overlooked, or that we did not really we did not really touch them before. And I'd like us to start, which this is also our last lesson for the pre-finals. I'd like us to start with the branches of philosophy. Philosophy has five main branches. These are epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, logic, and aesthetics. Please do not be surprised if you are seeing the word aesthetics there with a letter E, not started with a letter E and not with a letter A. Aesthetics, spelled as AE, is British in spelling, while aesthetics with ES is American in spelling. But they mean the same thing. They refer to the same branch of philosophy. It's just by origin that the spelling changes. To start, we have epistemology, which is concerned with defining knowledge and what limits are there for knowledge. What's the limitation to one's knowledge? That's epistemology. It is basically the study of knowledge in terms of how we process our thought, in terms of how we know something, in how we can identify knowledge. That is the concern of epistemology. It tries to look at how we obtain knowledge, how much we know of the things around us, and how we have this knowledge, how we are able to obtain this knowledge. That's epistemology. By the way, in this discussion, as found in your module, we are going to define each branch of philosophy, at the same time identify areas or problems of concern. To begin with epistemology, its areas or problems include: what is the nature of knowledge? What is the nature of the process of knowledge? What are the sources of knowledge, and what are the criteria of determining truth? If you trace this back to the lessons that we had in philosophy, we have kind of answered them already. Like, what qualifies a truth to be called a truth? Remember that? What constitutes our knowledge? We had them discussed previously. But I think it's also right that we should also look at rationalism, empiricism, and intuitionism as sources of knowledge. Two of them have been defined. Intuitionism, I'll give the input later on. Rationalism stresses reason as an important element in knowing. There is a reason for everything. There is a reason to justify a particular knowledge or truth. All of that, all of these claims stand from rationalism. Empiricism is a different one because it relies on the five senses that a person possesses. Meaning, one acknowledges a truth if it is perceived by the senses. That's how empiricism works. Maybe you've encountered this as redundant as it sounds. Probably you've heard someone, or you've read it from somewhere, where there are others who don't believe in God because they don't see God. Because according to them, it is by seeing that they come to believe. Seeing is believing to these people. That's how empiricism works for them. That they would not believe in ghosts because they haven't seen one. They haven't heard of a ghost whispering to their ears because their experiences have not been met, their senses have not experienced them yet. They would not acknowledge these things as knowledge, as part of knowledge. Intuitionism is a particular manner of knowing by virtue of what drives you in terms of instinct. It's like you believe something to be true, you accept something as part of knowledge because that's what your instinct tells you. You work by instinct. Your knowledge is formed upon instinct or intuition. It's there's like a second voice, not conscience, it's not conscience. There's like a second voice that tells you that something is truthful, and then you accept it to be truthful. That's how intuitionism works. Another branch of philosophy is the second. How would you read the second one, Alan?
Metaphysics.
Correct. I'm glad that your age now really pronounces it as metaphysics. We do not pronounce that as metaphysics, it's metaphysics. Metaphysics is the study of reality. There is really a philosophy, these branches of philosophy are really trying to set a difference between truths, knowledge and truths, and reality. Metaphysics goes beyond the realms of science, as it is concerned with answering the questions about the identity and the world, all constituting to a version of reality. In this area or branch of philosophy, you have concerns on dualism, monism, materialism, spiritualism, and pluralism. From dualism, obviously, reality comes as separated two entities, such that, for example, a clear example to this is the concept of good and evil. Dualism sees good and evil as two distinct or separate entities. That good has its own domains or effect in the world. Evil also has its own domains and effect in the world. They are not to be taken as one that affects the other. That's not how dualism works. Dualism separates reality into two distinct units, which is the opposite of monism. Monism puts units into one, combines units into one. This is where, because of monism, there are several religions who believe in the existence of one supreme being. That's one example to this. In the context of good and evil, they are combined into one such that one must not do good. Sorry, one must do good and must not do evil. That's the philosophy of monism. Dualism sees it as you'll do good. There are also instances that you can do something that's evil because you might want to rationalize. Like you'll lie, evil, lying is evil. You'll lie, lying is wrong. You will lie as you are trying to protect someone. Dualism accepts that. Monism sees it differently. You should not really lie, because lying is bad. If you want to do something good, never lie. That's how monism looks at lying. Materialism. Materialism tells us that reality is based on having a physical form. A physical matter, or a matter with a physical form or a physical construct is seen to be real. So if yours, if it's just a mere concept, if it's not translated into something that is physical or tangible, yes, the term is tangible, physical, tangible, and visible to the eyes, then it's not real. That's how materialism sees it. Materialism is quite the opposite of spiritualism. Spiritualism is not also confined to reality in the spirit world. No, no, that's not the limit of spiritualism. Though spiritualism believes on that. Spiritualism acknowledges the existence of a world beyond this material world. That's one aspect under spiritualism. It accepts the existence of a spirit. It accepts as well, beyond the spirit, spiritualism accepts abstraction. The existence of a thought or a concept, ideation, the presence of an idea, which may not necessarily have a physical form. Like for instance, beauty. Is beauty abstract or concrete? Sure. It's abstract. Though people will say, no, beauty is this. Others might not say that. Others might even say, no, beauty is when you look at the creations around you, when you look at the sky, when you look at the mountains, when you look at the seas, that's beauty. O, di ba? We have varying versions of beauty because it is such an abstract concept. The materialistic philosopher, not materialistic, a materialist philosopher would not agree to that. A materialist philosopher would rather claim that beauty does not exist because it is not real, as there is no concrete manifestation of it. It's different from this. Oh my God. From a materialistic point of view, is this real? It is, because it has a physical form. It is tangible. It can be seen by the eyes, and you can hear it. For sure, you've missed that sound. That is why the materialist philosopher acknowledges the reality behind this one. But if you talk about faith, will a materialist philosopher accept that? No. Because faith is such an abstract concept. But the spiritualist philosopher acknowledges the presence of faith. So earlier I said dualism is the opposite of monism. Materialism is the opposite of spiritualism in trying to explain realities. Thankfully, the fifth one exists. Pluralism. That reality comes in varieties and in many versions. Pluralism simply addresses so many of these differences. Pluralism tells us that Lucia's version of reality may be different from Sean's version of reality. And that Sean's version of reality could even be different from Vince's version of reality. How he sees reality is different from how another person sees reality. One's background of reality is influenced, no, one's background of reality could be different from another person's background of reality, thereby influencing their perspectives in life. Look at how good that tries to justify it. But I think that's still quite pointless when you meet someone who is quite fixated on the philosophy that he believes in. Even if you're a pluralist, it's still useless. The pluralist tries to play it safe. Diba? If you try to weigh it, the pluralist plays it safe. The pluralist stays at the middle. The pluralist tries to mediate. Like if, for instance, if there's a conflict between Edson and Alona on whose idea of reality is better, the pluralist comes in at the middle to say, Edson is right, Alona is right. That's how the pluralist does it. Well, the pluralist is also true. The pluralist is also correct. But at some point, Alona also has a point, so does Edson. For the reasons behind their choice of a philosophy to explain their versions of reality. So that's metaphysics. Look at how confusing these branches of philosophy are. By the way, should you wish to take up philosophy when you proceed to college, you'll encounter many of their specifics. The next branch of philosophy is the philosophy of morals, of what's right and wrong, and we term that as ethics. It's a branch which tells you of what makes morality and what makes a value. What makes something acceptable as a value in a particular group. It is involved with placing value to personal actions, decisions, and relations. So you have their sample of ethical issues about abortion, sexual morality, death penalty, euthanasia, pornography, and ethics concerning the environment. For anything that attacks the rightness or wrongness of an action, or not necessarily attacks, for anything that questions the rightness or wrongness of an action, that's under ethics. What are the problems of ethics? You have, what is the nature of the life of excellence? Because it is believed that an excellent life is one that is really ethical, one that has adhered to the precepts of ethics. What is the ultimate work of the goals you seek? Hoping that it is not the wrong goals, or the goals that you seek are not to be accomplished with the wrong actions or wrong decisions. What specific courses of conduct will help lead to the life of excellence? Like, for one to be considered living a life of excellence, what life choices, good and correct life choices, should be carried out? What wrong life choices should be avoided? All of these are under the context of ethics. While trying to rely on what makes right from wrong, there's also a study on the rightness of reasoning, and that is logic. This is now to question how good or correct one's reasoning is given a particular instance or circumstance. Good logic includes the good use of thinking skills, and at the same time avoiding fallacies. Logic, uh, from the phrase, it's quite logical. That means that you make sense with your reasons. Something is illogical if you don't anymore make sense with the reasons you provide. There are now fallacies with your kind of reasoning. That is why your reason becomes illogical. What are the problems of logic? Consistency. To make sure that theorems do not contradict each other. Validity. That means that you provide your proofs, evidences to support your reasons. The premises you believe to be correct will have to be provided with reasons, proofs, to make sure that your claim is valid. Completeness. That is, of course, to make sure that your claim is complete. For it to be acceptable as true, it has to be complete. Soundness. The argument is valid, acceptable, not fallacious. The last one, the last branch of philosophy is aesthetics, which focuses on beauty and art. It is focused on the experience, the quality of an object, a feeling of pleasure. Classicism in art, a judgment of taste, the capacity of perception, an attitude and theory to art, the doctrine of beauty. All of those constitute what we refer to as aesthetics. What are the problems behind aesthetics? You have, what is beauty? For sure, from that question alone, people tend to vary with their answers. Quickly lang, what is your version of beauty, Lucia? What is your answer to that? What is beauty? I hope no one says beauty, sir, is in the eye of the beholder. Try to forego with that answer. Lucia, what is your version of that answer? What is beauty? Impromptu, impromptu, impromptu. Sean, what is beauty, Sean?
Beauty for me, sir, is that something that I can see, and of course, it is pleasing to the eyes for me.
Sean's answer, how would you define that? Um, under metaphysics, how would you call Sean?
Materialistic,
Where would
something.
you put yourself, Sean, under metaphysics?
I think their materialism.
Where will you put yourself, Sean, under epistemology?
Um, I think empiricism.
Empiricism, correct. So Sean is an empiricist at the same time a materialist. Remember earlier the term that I used was materialistic, so I had to change that. Materialistic is different from a materialist. What about Josh? What is your answer to that question, Josh? What is beauty?
Beauty for me is peace, sir.
Beauty is
Peace.
peace. That's the answer of Josh. Where will Josh put himself? Under metaphysics, Josh, where will you be classified?
I think it's monism, sir.
Again, sorry.
Is it monism, sir?
He can put himself under monism because Josh is combining peace and beauty together. Josh can also be considered under metaphysics. Josh can also be considered under. There's one more category, Josh, perhaps that you can put yourself into.
Can it be one, sir? Pluralism.
Again, sorry.
Can it be pluralism, sir? Because of like the different views.
Well, I cannot get the term properly. What's the other category, Josh? Pluralism. Why, Josh? Did you rely on so many? You looked at beauty at only one angle though. You saw beauty in terms of peace. So that's not pluralism. Pluralism is, let me give you an example of pluralism, ha? Um, no, Josh, we are looking at only you this time, man. Pluralism is, how does pluralism work? Assuming that I'm the student. Pluralism for me, sir, is something that I can see. It's also something that is peaceful. It's something that is also related to peace. At the same time, beauty to me, sir, is something that I need to fully appreciate. Diba? I have three versions of beauty. Three versions that may not be strongly tied up together because they can stand separately. So that's pluralism. But still, basing on your answer earlier, Josh, where there's just one, so it can't be under pluralism yet. But still under metaphysics, your answer can qualify into one category. What is that category, Josh? So you are now under monism and you are going to be under peace, Josh. Is that tangible or not?
Spiritualism, sir.
Spiritualism, correct. Because peace is, can, yeah, that's correct, Josh. It can be attributed to the concept of heaven. It's not also quite tangible, or it does not have a material form or a physical form. Peace is not something that you can see in the mall. Like when you go to the mall, peace is there. Oh, why? It's in the rack. It's not. When you go to school, peace is here. Why? Because I can see peace moving from one room to another. That's not how it works. That's what about the second question? What is the relation of the beautiful to the true and the good? So aesthetics. So the first question was what is beauty? The second question is what is the relation of the beautiful and the good? Aesthetics goes beyond the concept of merely defining beauty and art. It's also trying to establish the connection of goodness to being beautiful. Like someone who is good is identified to be beautiful. Or that if you are not a good person, you are not beautiful. That's how aesthetics also tries to see it. Are there criteria by means of which we can judge a work of art in an objective sense? Of course, there are lenses to examine a work of art. What is the art itself? Is it a reproduction of a vision into ultimate reality? To what extent does sense of appreciation of beauty contribute to the enrichment of human life? All of these concerns fall under aesthetics. To find the connection between beauty and art to life. The word art here also falls also tries to embrace literature. I think we didn't do it last year though, but recall your previous experiences with literature. Have you reached that point where you've been asked, how does this how does this short story, or how is this poem related to you? Or what area in this poem can you find yourself relatable with? What line, what stanza, what paragraph do you find quite striking? These are questions of aesthetics. There is a hierarchical relationship among these branches of philosophy. That is now to present what comes first and what supposedly comes next. You have metaphysics first, followed by epistemology, then ethics, politics comes in, and then aesthetics. You can, of course, replace politics with logic. You can put politics and logic together because upon knowing what makes an action to be right or wrong from ethics, you can now discern further to use the right reason on whether doing such an action or not. Diba? That's the definition of logic. Logic being defined as the study of right reasoning, to know whether our choice of a reason is logical or not. So you can put in politics, logic next to ethics or together with politics. You have there the other branches of philosophy. These are now the different areas of philosophy, like the philosophy of education. It has something to do with philosophies that have contributed to how learning is formed. When you take up education as a course in college, you'll be introduced to so many of these philosophies in education. Philosophies like pragmatism, progressivism, constructivism, essentialism. So many isms exist in the philosophy of education. The philosophy of history is also there to particularly question whether history is progressing towards a specific end. You have the philosophy of law or the study of law. You also have the philosophy of mathematics. Yeah, like I think you have these theorems in math. You have postulates in math. So that's part of the philosophy of mathematics. What's postulate number one in math? I don't know if this is really true, huh? But I have my geometry teacher to mention for this. Her name is Maria Delia Arcales. She shared to us postulate number one under the philosophies of mathematics. What's postulate number one? For a while. Sir Jeff. Still have class. Never mind. I'll just ask. Do you know what postulate number one is? But you've had math. You have a lot of things in math already. We were told back in when I was in third year high school, and really Ma'am Marcales shared this to us. She told us that in geometry, the very first postulate is that 2 points make up a line. 2 points make up a line. Like a line should be made up of 2 points, at least 2 points. Because there are also points in between. You can never have a line if there's just 1 point. So there needs to be 2 points to make up a line. And that's postulate number one in geometry, in mathematics. And that's one good example under the philosophies of math. You also have the philosophies of language. Something that we have studied in our major. We have linguistics, social linguistics. Pragmatism is also a philosophy in language. So many um, um, immersion is another philosophy of language. The philosophy of politics, it is the study of government and nations, how they came about, what makes a good government, what obligations citizens have towards the government. All of these constitute the philosophy of politics. The philosophy of mind, to ascertain what the mind is, how the mind works or interacts with the body. That's the philosophy of mind. A philosophy of religion, theology, the philosophy that tries to study God, the belief in one God, theology. They're also close to the philosophy of religion. Then the philosophy of science. It is from this philosophy that so many branches of science have come out. As there are so many areas to study in this world, the philosophies of science have also been crafted. Like there are areas that want to study how life works, so you have biology. There are areas that concern with how plants, the mechanics of plants, so you have botany. Those with animals, those with the inner mechanisms of the human being, these branches have come out all together under the philosophy of science. Questions regarding these branches of philosophy. So this is our last topic before your pre-finals exam. For finals, well, for the finals period, we'll just see what else we can add in to your lessons. Questions? Do you have some questions? If there are no questions, so for now, that will be all. Goodbye and thank you, grade 11.